The Finance Minister has thrown a lifeline to the receiver of revenue. Tax increases to the tune of 40 billion rand will be implemented over the next few years. Earlier this month, SARS Commissioner Edward Kieswetter said the collector needed 800 million rand to operate efficiently again during a time where revenue collection is a struggle. Well, let's get his take on the midterm budget. Edward Kieswetter, good evening and thank you so much for your time. Firstly, you've had an opportunity to listen to what the Minister had to say. How do you think it's fundamentally going to impact the work that you're doing at SARS?
Well, I think, Kathy, the Minister issued a very clear warning that if we do not implement the expenditure curtailment, and the big areas being the wage bill as well as other areas, we will be facing a fiscal crisis. So that's a big issue. Secondly, we understand that government currently is resource constrained, and therefore SARS is not the only entity that is going to be reduced in funding and short of funding. The difference is that SARS clearly needs the capability to generate more revenue. And so in that regard, we have indicated to the Parliamentary Committee of Finance about 3 weeks ago that by our estimate, we need to fill at least 680 critical vacancies in order for us to step up the level of work we are currently doing. So it's not an all or nothing, but the big issue is that we can do so much more given the levels of compliance that have declined and the levels of corruption that has increased. The work of SARS needs to step up significantly, and that is resource dependent.
Are there particular sectors which you believe have been left perhaps not as attended to as they could have been, where there is wastage, where there is money that is perhaps leaving through the cracks? Often people reference illicit financial flows, and SARS is mentioned and people say, well, why doesn't SARS ensure that none of this money that leaves the country actually never leaves?
So all of the money that leaves the country are supposed to leave through an application and approval by the Reserve Bank. What we have found, though, Kathy, is all kinds of schemes are entered into by companies who then overstate the value of goods that they are to acquire and, in fact, therefore take money offshore that shouldn't be offshore. There are all kinds of arrangements in terms of transfer pricing abuse that takes money offshore. And those are the areas that we have identified across all sectors where there is opportunity for us to stem that flow and to ensure that the tax revenues are in fact due. We also find in the areas of imports where there is the underdeclaration of values and goods that are imported purely because companies want to underdeclare and therefore minimize their customs duty. So we are very clear about the areas of abuse. We've shared that in public reports before, so I won't detail that now. We are very clear that there is a huge areas of abuse that does result into underperformance and under-collection by SARS. It is not simply a straightforward correlation between what happens in the economy and what happens with revenue collection. Very important factors is the public confidence in SARS, which impact on, and in government, by the way, not just in SARS, which impacts on tax morality, and we've seen a significant decline as far as that is concerned. And then secondly, the capability of SARS has to step up so that can effectively administer its mandate and ensure that the revenue that is due to the government can be collected.
You're talking about capacitating SARS and bringing more people on board at a time where other sectors, at least other entities within the public sector, are possibly facing job losses and even salary cuts. Realistically, is it something that you're going to be able to do? So these 618 people that you need in order to do even more of what you're doing now, how many of those do you realistically think you'll be able to get on board?
Well, so obviously the more of that we can replace, and also it's not just staff, it's also investment in technology an investment in data management, artificial intelligence, because that also improves our ability to detect non-compliance and areas of abuse. We need to be connected into the economy. Kathy, so we understand that we will not necessarily get everything we ask for, but my job is to say this is what we need, and then to use and accept that which we are allocated and to use it wisely. It's also important, like every other government institution, that the money we already allocated, we are excellent stewards of that money, and therefore improving our internal efficiencies, rethinking the way we work is all part of the project of rebuilding SARS.
Of course, you're also going to be faced this year with ordinary South Africans who might not be able to meet their tax obligations simply because of the financial situations that they find themselves in. How are you going to be dealing with those individuals in particular? And these are not ill-meaning people, you know?
Sure. So let me tell you that the good news is that ordinary South Africans, income earners, generally those in the area of the social and income levels that you're referring to, generally for them their fulfillment of their tax obligation is a refund position. So government actually hands out money. So I can give you, for example, the current filing season, we have already paid out refunds of around about 15 billion rand to 1.4 million taxpayers. So actually, the fulfillment of the obligation by ordinary South Africans invariably result in money in their pockets. And we can say that because we are currently involved in the filing season. The under-collection or the under-recovery by corporates and other entities, you will know that government introduced tax relief measures, which allowed for almost what you can call a tax-free loan. Effectively, it is the deferral of certain payments that are due and a repayment arrangement beyond that. Then within the normal tax administration tools that we have, companies who are in financial trouble can approach SARS, and this is really what we want to encourage, that taxpayers do not take the law into their own hands and give themselves a tax deferral, that they rather approach SARS and then enter into an agreement with SARS to repay their debt over a period that we believe we can manage the credit risk of those companies. And then in the absolute final, there is also instruments available to us where companies are in business rescue or in financial trouble, where we can enter into some debt compromise arrangements.
Edward Kieswetter is the SARS Commissioner. Let me thank you for your time tonight on News at Prime.